this meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. Board members present here tonight is myself, Dana Powers, and Lisa Hines. We have board members remotely, Jack Nicolai and Steve Brown. Board members absent, Nick Poloni will not be with us tonight. Administration present physically, we have over here Connie Valenza. To my right is Patty Fitzgerald. We have, Judy Marchkowski. I feel like I've done that so many good times.
And you do it perfect every time.
I'm really proud. Thanks. Ryan Sandberg and Susan Jarvis. And administration present remotely, that would be no one. And then visitors, we have
Bob Thornton from Kids Club.
Bob Thornton from Kid Club. He will be on later. And then can I just get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as printed.
Okay, so moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Okay. All those in favor? Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And Dana, aye. Motion carries. Go ahead, Connie.
So the first item on the agenda this evening, and the reason for our guests this evening as well, is the request from Kids Club to continue their on-set child care programming here in the Salem School facility. I say ongoing because they have been with us for many years. The reason we're addressing it from this perspective, though, is because of the increased concerns around COVID-19. They're offering programming 4K through 8th grade for students, and we'll talk a little bit about their 3-year-old program as well. Some of the things that in working with them to kind of both meet the needs that we have here in the school district and to be consistent with how we're doing things during the school day, to make sure that we're not doing things during the school day that then all of a sudden the end of the school day comes and all of that work our teachers have put in kind of maintaining cohorts and all that kind of thing then kind of drops to the wayside. So they'll be using the guidelines set forth by Salem Grade School in their back to school plan. Face coverings or masks would be mandatory for all staff and most children anytime Kids Club is within the Salem Grade School building, unless there is a medical exemption, just as ours is. Kids Club would only be available to families choosing the traditional model set forth by the school. Ideally, all Salem students that attend Kids Club will be placed in the same classroom while at school. We're going to try and accommodate that. In most cases, for example, if we're looking at 3 or 4 students at a grade level, that will be something we can do. If we're looking at 10, that might be a little more difficult because that could create a load in a class that would be kind of unnatural from the way our other classes. But our goal would be to get them into 1 classroom cohort or 2 at the most. If weather permits, care will be outside on the school grounds with grade level cohorts participating in games and outdoor activities. If the weather does not permit, care would be available in grade level cohorts in the cafeteria. The maximum capacity for the cafeteria would be 50 students. And this is similar. We've actually kind of mapped out our capacity as we talked about providing lunch programming for students. That 50 capacity is about what we looked at for that room as well. Each grade level cohort would be grouped at tables within the cafeteria following social distancing guidelines, and face coverings and masks would be mandatory. The 3-year-old program would be its own cohort for the 2021 school year. Per the state mandate, these children would not be required to wear face coverings or masks. If weather permits, again outside. If it does not permit, inside room 305. That's where they've traditionally been. The maximum capacity for this room would be 10 students. So I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from.
Mr. Brown, see if we can.
Hey, Steve or Jack? Steve or Jack, could you please mute your phone?
I just muted Steve.
Okay. So, based on these, we had a pretty lengthy conversation. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that I didn't share with the board, but my biggest concern kind of going in was that the setup that we had going on in school would kind of be followed then when students went into the program. I think it's also accurate to say that if the families are not able to avail themselves of care here because we don't offer it, those same students will go somewhere out in the community to get the care where their cohorts will be mixed up. And I think there is some benefit in having them within cohorts here. So my recommendation would be we approve the Kids Club on-site care as presented. Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think in the end, you know, we already discussed all this, and what we really did was try to follow all the guidelines that were presented by the school. And obviously, this is going to be changing from week to week, day to day as we go, and we're open to doing whatever it takes to keep the program here at the school is what it really boils down to. Again, we've been running a program at 4 different schools all summer long. We haven't been following the cohort guideline. We've been using just social distancing. We've had about 100 kids in the program during every day throughout the summer here, and we've had no cases so far. So I mean, we've been very fortunate. You know, the guidelines we've set forth have been working. You know, we check the kids at the door. We check their temperature at the door. You know, we ask questions about who they've been in contact with, et cetera, which we're going to continue to do that as well. So for before school program, we would be checking their temperature, asking them questions, the parents questions to make sure that they haven't been in contact with anybody. But in the end, you know, again, we're going to be trying to work with the school as closely as possible to make sure we're following what you want to see us doing. So.
Have you communicated this to the parents at all?
Uh,
Any sort of form, like, do they kind of know what's coming, or?
Well, no, I haven't, because as of about a week ago, I just was under the assumption we were going to be here, and I just kind of found out that that it was in question. So now that it's in question, I did let them know that we would get approval, hopefully get approval tonight, and then tomorrow we'd be sending out a mass email letting them know exactly what's going on. Throughout the summer with our social distancing guidelines, I mean, they weren't thrilled about that to begin with, either the kids or the families to some extent. But again, it kind of is what it is. This is what we're going to have to do to be able to offer the care, and that's the same thing here. Yep, we're going to tighten up because this is what the school's asking us to do. I don't know how they're going to end up reacting. I mean, it's going to be a long day of sitting with their grade level cohorts, and you know, that might affect our program, and we may not have as many families sign up. But again, if they need the care, this is what we're going to have to do. So it just is what it is. You know, it's a sign of the times until we figure out how to move past it.
I think from my perspective, I recognize that it would be very difficult to have our teachers go to some pretty significant steps to try and keep kids within cohorts and separated, to the point of having to be in their classroom pretty much all day, not being able to have kids leave for specials and things like that. And I just didn't want all of that kind of sacrifice and effort and work on the part of our staff to then at the end of the day, students walk down the hall and now they're mixing in grade levels in different cohorts. And so I recognize that happens outside of here, but I really felt it was a commitment to our staff to say that the programming within our building would have the same levels of expectation as the programming that we provide through our school.
Well, we can only control so far, right? So we can control what's under our roof. And that's just, it makes sense.
Yep.
It's also, I like that it's for the traditional, that's what you call it, right, the 4-day. I think that's interesting too, where it's if you're making that commitment and making that choice to do 4 full days in school, chances are they're working and you need the aftercare program too. So that makes sense to me, that if we can just provide that total package solution, then just for, you know, it makes sense. I like the plan.
I do too.
Jack, Steve,
Yes,
did you guys have any comments?
I'm fine.
You good? Steve, you still with us? Okay, we'll take that as.
Okay, I move to approve the Kids Club on-site care as presented.
So moved.
Jack Nicolai, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Lisa?
Aye.
Steve, are you there? We still have, okay, Jack?
Aye.
And then Dana Powers, aye, and motion carries.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to not stay either.
Oh, I'm not. I know how long these go.
Oh, that's a really interesting policy.
I know, it's a lot of fun to be here, but thank you, I will go.
Try to contain yourself.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
So I think if you recall back in the end of June, we talked about access to the building, and at that time, the decisions were made based on the summer programming, and then a decision to be made then in the fall, to check and see if things had changed. So we had addressed the outside group access to indoor facilities back at that time, and a decision was made to allow some groups that used our outdoor facilities, provided they had a plan in place. So like Wisconsin Lightning, we did open up for them. At that time, a decision was made not to open up for outside group use of our indoor facilities. But we do continue to have those requests from our community groups and clubs, for example, Girl Scouts, youth basketball, etc. Some considerations that the board may want to take into account in making this decision is it will lead to additional adults in our building that are not our actual employees. If it's after school during a time when our custodians will have to be doing significant cleaning of our facilities. Salem has canceled all of our in-facility groups and activities after school. Additional building areas to clean and monitor. And then just a reminder too that West Ocean Middle School Conference has canceled all of their fall sports and activities. So I guess at this point I'm bringing it back. I do obviously have some concerns in terms of both protecting the safety of our students as much as we can, but also the safety of students who are using our facilities. But the decision obviously would be up to the board.
Do you know what the area schools are doing?
For
For instance, I know the high school specifically is available, but I do not know the outside groups. But they're having a lot of activity in their building, and I was just wondering for the other grade schools, especially since all sports have been canceled, are they entertaining anything after school at all, or are they closed?
Not that I have heard of, and I think part of it has to do with most buildings are really restricting adult access to the building as well, even to the point of no parent volunteers and that type of thing within the building. The fact that in after-school programming, there really is not a district person that provides supervision to make sure that social distancing is being observed and those types of things. There isn't anybody on site during those times. But to my knowledge, most of the area, K-8s anyway, are very similar in their approach to, although it's very unfortunate, and I recognize that the facilities are a significant community investment, but protecting our students is our number one priority at this time.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, especially with after school activities canceled and now sports are, I'm sure it's a scheduling nightmare, but then you've got to clean and I get that. That is sad. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. All of this sucks, right? Like nobody is enjoying this. So I think it's more of we can only control what's inside our building, and everyone, especially in this room, has been working so hard to make sure that we have everything in place so our staff feels good. So all of that, and it would just be absolutely devastating for an after-school program to be something that shuts us down. So maybe we just revisit it at semester end, or
my recommendation would be that you look at, there is kind of the fall season, then you move into the winter season. My recommendation would be we revisit it. I'm not real confident that things will change, but I would recommend that we revisit it maybe around the end of October as you look at some of those winter type activities.
You've got you got such a timing issue as the winter is coming in with break. You've got all of those kids, you've got everybody coming back after break, after mingling, and I don't, that's a pretty dangerous time.
Well, and this is after hearing, was it Rob or Bob, or, you know, hearing him talk too, again, how we're working with, he's been such a great partner with him, we're working with him to make sure that the cohorts are together. You start introducing, you know, Girl Scouts across grades or whatever else where it's
Yeah.
just, again, we can control. Jack, Steve, anything before we?
I've always been a big proponent of outside groups using the school. I think it's really good PR for the community to see what we do here and what a beautiful place this is. But I agree that right now, our number one priority should be the safety of our students. And if that means we have to postpone these groups for a while, I think that re-examining at the end of October is a really good idea.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess technically you don't, they're closed now, so, I mean, if you had you could do it either way in terms of clarity. If you wanted to make a motion to keep, outside group access to indoor facilities closed at this time, you could do that. If there is no motion, they were closed, so I'm assuming you would need then a motion to reopen. So I think it depends on what the board feels that would be best to the community for clarity.
What if we just temporarily add it to October's agenda? And if it works, it works.
Okay. Right. So we have a special education teacher contract up for approval. That position or that contract has been offered to Alyssa Santiago. She has a bachelor's degree in education from Northern Illinois University, certification both at elementary and middle level education as well as cross-categorical special education. She has experience as an elementary teacher in the Hmong American Peace Academy with Milwaukee Public Schools, which was the last school year. Our recommendation would be to approve a contract for Alyssa as a special education teacher at a salary of not less than $43,900 for the 2021 school year as presented.
What grades?
Fifth grade, okay. But I just would say fifth grade for now. It is, when we do a contract in special education, it could be in any of those grade levels that they're certified for, but presently for the school year it would be in fifth grade.
I move to approve Alyssa Santiago's contract for the 2020-2021 school year as a special education teacher.
So moved.
Jack Nicolai, second.
What did you say?
Jack second.
Got it. All those in favor, Lisa?
Aye.
Steve, are you there, Steve? No, he's not even on the.
He's on, but his microphone is muted and I'm not getting him.
Steve, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. Jack
Aye.
and Dana Powers, aye, and motion carries.
So then I have up for approval a temporary reduction of hours for special education teacher assistants. There will not, as you know, in approving our delivery model of educational services this year, there will not be direct student instruction on Wednesday, with minimal exceptions during that first semester. There will not be a need for special education teacher assistants to provide virtual support or follow-up on Wednesdays. Again, there may be some very unique circumstances with special education students, but for the most part, there will not be an across-the-board need. We have not typically assigned teacher assistants on professional development days in the past. There is a need to limit the number of staff in the building to prevent congregating of staff. There is a need to hire additional teaching staff and increase the hours of custodial staff thus increasing our budgetary needs elsewhere. Last spring, there were
Excuse me,
concerns.
this is Steve, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, for some reason I was disconnected, thank you.
So last spring, there were concerns about inequities related to teacher assistant time needs that resulted in us paying those that were required to work additional pay. Because it was a scenario where we had some assistants that had very limited hours to work that were home, and so then it felt inequitable to those that had to come in every day, and so we ended up paying those that came in every day additional. The district will need those additional resources to cover the cost of EPSLA leave, as essential employees will need to be replaced. So one of the things that happened last spring, because we were in total online when we had teacher assistants who applied for the federally required EPSLA leave, we didn't have to find a replacement for them to cover the needs of students. Going forward, that will be very different. If we remain open and we have a staff member that requests the EPSLA leave, the district is obligated to pay either full salary or 2/3 of their salary or their wages based on what type of leave they're requesting. But we would have to replace them then with staff as well, leading to additional costs. Teacher assistant positions supporting general education classrooms for next year are only 30 hours in most cases, so they're already not coming in on Wednesday. There may be a need for 1 or 2 38-hour positions, but these would be teacher assistant, not special education teacher assistant positions, to provide teacher support on Wednesday if some of the present special education assistants are interested in a transfer into that position. So if the loss of the 8 hours, for example, creates a financial hardship, it won't obviously meet the needs of all of them, but we will have a couple positions that they may be interested in transferring into. Just so you're aware, and I'm sure you are, but general education assistants and special education assistants are paid from different funds. So, for example, we have certain requirements related to the dollars that we have that flow to special education. So I don't have the same ability to use them to do general education type activities within the school. There may be a need for teacher assistants to voluntarily ride our buses to assist with seating, but that is one of those things I don't want to assign. It is a situation where I can't guarantee social distancing. However, if there are teacher assistants who want to get some of those additional hours back, that may be an option to provide for that. There will
Connie, this is Steve.
Yeah.
With regard to any of the assistants who would be on the 30-hour schedule, if you will there be opportunities, if they come up, where they could be contacted, if, as you were just saying, if additional hours might be possible if there is a need, and then they would just be contacted and asked if they wish to take on those additional duties?
Correct. So
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is there will be additional opportunities for hours. They won't be guaranteed for all of them, but they may be available if there are staff that, for financial reasons, need to pick up those other hours. Like I said, I am probably going to, it would be really good to have, especially kind of early on, have teacher assistants riding on some of our buses, assisting and making sure that students have masks on and students are sitting socially distant. But I recognize that for some of our teacher assistants who routinely in the past have come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 to 8, coming, an hour and a half earlier to pick up those extra hours may not be possible. So I didn't want to just create those hours and say, here's your additional hours to get you up to 40. I wanted to make sure that that was voluntary if they wanted to do that. Just as a forewarning, there will likely be overall reductions in the numbers of needed special education assistants at the August 25th, 2020 regular school board meeting, which is coming up, based on the number of special education students who will not be returning or who have chosen online or blended programming. And I think one of the questions that comes up is, well, let's say a special education student chooses online programming, don't they still need support? Well, the answer to that is kind of it depends, because let's say, for example, the support that they were receiving from a teacher assistant may have been behavior support or may have been cueing for the student and that type of thing. That support is providing them support within a regular classroom setting that may not be needed necessarily in the online setting. So based on the number of students we have that have chosen online or blended, we're likely going to need to reduce staff just because of that piece in and of itself.
Are you talking just assistants or also teachers?
No. So the teaching place would still stay in place. The assistants, remember, and I'll let Judith add a little bit to this, but they're there to provide support for students within that kind of regular education setting. And depending upon what setting they're in, some of those supports still may be needed, but some of them may not. It just depends on that individual student's needs and their IEP. Did you want to add anything to that?
So we're just talking about special education assistants. We're not talking about teacher positions at this time. So no, I think you did a great job explaining it.
So taking that a step further, if there are significantly less special ed kids, would that impact the number of special ed teachers?
No, because those students still need to be serviced no matter if they're in the virtual world, blended world, or in their traditional.
Okay.
So we still need to provide that specially designed instruction for their IEP. So those requirements won't be there. It's just then the additional support that a paraprofessional might supply, such as need to stand next to a child for prompting and cueing while the teacher's talking. Well, if you're not in that setting, then you wouldn't need that. It might have been a paraprofessional to take a student on a break. We won't need that. And so we've had some students who have elected to learn in the home environment. Therefore, I just don't need that level of support.
And I think the other thing too, though, is it is true that if we had a significant reduction of students that left and went to another district, or a parent decided to homeschool those students, it is possible we may need less special education staff. However, special education staff are assigned more of a caseload as opposed to being assigned like paraprofessionals are to individual students and the needs that student has. So a teacher caseload going from 12 students down to 11 students wouldn't suggest that you no longer need that teacher. And then, of course, our teachers are typically contracted, which does make a difference as well. So, okay. So then, going on, what we're recommending would be reducing our special education assistants from 40 hours a week down to 32 hours a week for the first semester of the 2020-21 school year. We are recommending, because this is a hardship for our staff, and because it's unexpected, we are recommending not reducing the employee health insurance contribution for the remainder of the calendar year. Remember, based on their FTE is how their contribution to health insurance is calculated. So we're recommending not reducing that for these particular employees for this next year. And we're also recommending that the reduction actually take effect during the week beginning September 14th, thus giving them that 2-week notice that is typically given our staff in terms of reductions for hourly staff, in terms of reductions or a reduction in hours. My recommendation, and this is not, I recognize this is not easy. I don't want to gloss over this for our employees. I know it is a hardship for them. But based on our overall kind of the financial needs in the district, the needs of our students in the district, and the needs to reduce the amount of staff that we have that we're kind of trying to keep from congregating in the building and to try and come up with things for them to be doing when we need that level of support in other areas. Our recommendation would be to reduce the weekly hours for special education assistants as presented.
I move to reduce the weekly hours for special education assistants as presented.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
All those in favor? Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And Dana Powers, aye. Motion carries.
And you know, I do think it's important that everyone, that it is known with respect to the insurance that, obviously that's an important factor that we are maintaining that.
Agreed.
So now we have a long series of policy changes. This is usually an annual thing. I won't go into great detail. If I was reading each of these policies, we would be here for weeks. But I'll kind of give you the highlights of the changes. We did meet as a policy committee last week to go over these with Jack and Steve, and I appreciate their patience in going through all of those policies. The most important one probably, and this is kind of a unique circumstance, is the first reading of 3266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. I say this is unique or extenuating circumstances because it has been kind of within a very recent court case hearing, kind of dragged out, lots of kind of appeals on this. But by the time it was really solidified, it actually has to be implemented by this Friday. And so what I am asking for is a first reading, but because of the extenuating circumstances, immediate implementation for that period of time in between now and the second reading, because we do have to have it approved by the 14th. So I'll go over a little bit what it is. This new policy is provided for the purpose of implementing the recent Title IX regulations promulgated by the Department of Education. The regulatory requirements go into effect on August 14th, 2020. One of the things I will share with you is that this is a very wide-ranging document. The document itself is about 2,000 pages. The majority of the impact will be felt at the college level or post-secondary level, but K-12s do fall under Title IX. The regulations provide detailed requirements concerning Title IX protections, as well as detailed provisions for identifying, reporting, investigating, and making determinations of responsibility for acts of sexual discrimination or harassment that school districts must follow in responding to such incidents. Again, required policy implementation by August 14th. The regulations provide great detail concerning the use of supportive measures, providing remedies, and imposing sanctions in respondents in the event of a violation if it's found to have occurred. It will require significantly more comprehensive and specific method of response to reports of sexual discrimination and harassment than is required for other forms of discrimination and harassment. It requires naming a Title IX coordinator. That will be Judith for our district. They recommend that it not be the district administrator, so she was the slowest one to say not it. But no, I think it makes a lot of sense for her to be in that role based on the pupil services kind of interaction with social workers and counselors and our special programming. And so she is, and obviously she's very qualified, so she is, in my mind, the best person to do that from the district perspective. It will require all staff training, so that will be an aspect of our back to school training that we're going to be doing, and significantly more comprehensive training for administrators. Our administrative team will be trained by our school district's attorney firm on Friday, August 14th. Another Friday training.
Is
Yes.
Shayna doing that or somebody in
Yes,
her?
her firm is.
Oh, so not her specific, okay.
I think she's actually a part of it. She's part of doing the training. But I feel pretty good about that because there are different firms that are doing the training, but it only makes sense that we use the firm that we work with most closely.
That's great.
So the recommendation would be to approve the policy for first reading, but this is a little different. First reading, extenuating circumstances, immediate implementation for policy 3266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities.
It sounds like we don't have a choice, right? Like we have.
We really have very,
Yeah.
correct.
So it's just a format.
I move to approve policy for the first reading, extenuating circumstances, immediate implementation for policy number 3266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
All those in favor? Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And Dana Powers? Aye, motion carries.
Okay, the rest of these are just policy updates for first reading consideration. What I would recommend is we go through all of them and do one motion for all of them. There may be some that you decide you're not ready to give first motion to, and so then it would be first motion or first reading motion presented with the exception of policy, if there's a policy that you decide that you don't want to put
Who's
forward.
on the policy committee?
Steve and Jack.
Steve and Jack, did you guys have any concerns from the first reading?
This is Steve. I don't. The presentation that Connie made was incredibly thorough. We went through all of them. Everything was highlighted. A great number of the changes were very minor or were just made in order to meet either state or federal guidelines. So I'm fine with all the recommendations.
And having read through policy things before, there's a lot of repetition and some of the changes happen over and over again. So it's understandable that there's going to be a lot of reading, but I did have one question about one policy and Connie was able to explain it to me. And I'm fine with these. We put some time in on them and we did a good job, I think.
That was code for a really long, boring meeting.
That's not what I heard.
Okay.
Connie, do you have any red flags or anything that jumped out at you?
No, I don't. Do you want me to kind of go through them real just basically?
No, I mean, I read through. Have you read?
No.
No,
Well-
I think that sounds great. I would think if you three don't have any red flags, then we can continue reading on our own.
Mhm.
Yeah. Make the motion.
Uh,
Can you just get the motion on the screen?
Yes.
I move to approve the revised policies as presented for first reading.
So moved.
Steve Brown, second.
Okay, all those in favor? Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And Dana Powers, aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Connie.
Okay, so
And
then,
Connie, once again, thank you for all of your work, you and all the staff in working on all those.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Connie, really, thank you.
You're welcome. We're at that point of adjournment, and just a reminder before you adjourn that our next board meeting is coming up fairly quickly. This will be a regular board meeting. It will be the August regular board meeting on August 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Can I ask a question, or am I not allowed because it's not on the agenda?
You are allowed to ask a question. It's just you can't, so if you bring anything into a board, if it's not on the agenda, no decisions can be
Gotcha.
made. But I can certainly answer questions.
Okay. So how is the planning going now that you have all the surveys in and you know where everyone is?
I
see
it's
sweat.
Notice how they all have masks, so you can't really see that look of fear that we probably all have.
Yeah.
It is going incredibly fast. Every day feels like a week, I would say, you know, as we try and scramble. We're following up on individual students that, you know, maybe didn't respond to the survey, and I think what makes that difficult is to try and set up true class lists. We really need all of the pieces in the puzzle right now because there's not a lot of room to adjust afterwards. My administrative team has been amazing. They're working really hard to try and pull us all off. Our staff is really anxious because the decisions, in fairness to them, just can't be made fast enough. You know, it's just we're gathering data, but they want to know and have a right to know. What classroom am I going to be in? Which kids am I going to have? How do I, you know, all those questions. And we're really scrambling to try and come up with answers for them. Probably not fast enough. I feel like every day I feel a little better about we are going to be able to pull this off. But then, of course, you read the news and things like that, and then you feel a little bit like, ooh, I don't know. I mean, it's very stressful for everybody right now. And I think what I have felt from my staff is that they are incredibly committed to our kids. They want to be back here in the building working with our kids. They feel our kids need them. That's what I've heard at least. And I have every confidence that it will look incredibly hectic and unorganized and crazy up until the day the kids come into school, and we'll pull it off and do a nice job. I really believe that. Anybody want to add anything to that?
Good luck.
I agree.
And you guys get the same feeling from your staff members too?
Absolutely, yeah.
There's gotta be
Such a level of excitement from staff to come in and, well, I once you get here though, it's how rewarding for them. We appreciate everything that you're doing. I know how hard this is. It's, and I think it's amazing the hard work that you've put in. It certainly shows. You can feel it.
Teachers are.
Yeah, and if I can add something, my neighbor, stopped me, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he just wanted to thank, he said, please make sure the entire board, as well as all the administrative staff and everyone in the district knows how much he and other parents he has talked to appreciate the three options that parents have been given, because he has friends in other districts in the area who are not given those choices, and he just wanted me to pass that on to everyone.
I think, you know, I feel really good about the choices, and I've heard from many of our families, they really appreciate that because they are coming from different places and have different needs. And that has been an aspect that, again, from an amazing leadership team and staff, is a huge amount of work to pull that off. I mean, it just is going to be, but very much appreciated from what I've seen by our families.
Well, that freedom to choose is everything. I mean, so much of that has been taken away from us, and you know, everybody has a choice, right? Even teachers, even you guys, you know. So I think it's amazing that we're able to do that and stick with it for so long. And I think it's a matter of we can do what we can, right? This is an amazing plan, and if the health department comes along, then it's on them, right? Like we can go to sleep at night knowing that we've done everything possible to keep our staff safe and happy, and the kids happy. I think we're doing.
Connie?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You have your ear to the ground, so you know what the other schools are doing in the area. Supposedly Kenosha and Racine are completely virtual.
Correct.
How many other schools in our area are doing like a combo situation like we are?
I think many of them are doing the on-site, kind of the 4-day or 5-day a week and online. There aren't too many around here that are doing the full options where they have the 3 options to do the blended. But most of the districts, the smaller districts certainly around us, are doing the combination. I think one of the things that is unique about Salem and yet challenging about Salem is we're quite a lot larger than many of those districts. So trying to handle the three options within a much larger group of students is more challenging. But it also gives us a little more in terms of numbers to be able to get enough students to run, for example, a blended section or an online section. So there's some, some things either way, but I believe in this immediate area, we're the only one with the three full options available.
Right.
Well, and
Connie, will you be giving an update if necessary, if there is an update with regards to anything regarding bus transportation at the regular board meeting?
Yes, I mean, so the only thing that's happening right now is the bus company actually today called and asked if we were any closer on giving them our list. Our hope is to give them our list by about Thursday, because that's where, I mean, they're in fairness to them, they need to know which students they're transporting, and there are many students who maybe would have taken transportation but have decided not to. So we just need to work through those lists and get those to them.
Sure.
what
Sure.
numbers,
Okay, very good.
what numbers came in on that? Because I know we have, what we learned at last meetings, it was like 700 kids take the bus. What number are you at?
So I honestly don't know right now, to be honest with you. I've been so focused on the numbers in the blended and the numbers in the traditional and the numbers in online, trying to get that set up.
And then how have you been deciding what teachers are the in-classroom and which ones are the 2-day virtual?
We've been asking them.
Okay, so
Yes,
it's more of
and
like a
so the
comfort.
team has been getting together, and in all cases, they've decided who's going to teach what.
That's amazing. Okay, so it can be based on if they're more or less worried or what their strengths and.
You know, it's been interesting. I think it has been hardest to find teachers to do the online and the blended, which tells you how much our staff really prefers being with kids. But we've had very experienced staff that have stepped up and said they would be willing to do the online or the blended. And I think part of the reason I say that is that online, the way in which we're doing online, which is different from the way we did it in the past, is literally they will be teaching and being videoed or filmed the entire time. It takes a very confident teacher to feel comfortable both teaching kids, recognizing that they've got to be communicating with kids who are online at the same time, and feeling confident in their teaching to be filmed. And so I give huge kind of props to our staff that have stepped up and said they would be willing to do that, because it is a big job as well. And so we kind of went into this saying that we would prefer that the teams chose who was teaching what. I mean, ultimately, we would need to make a decision if we didn't have people who volunteered, but in all cases, we had the team come together and decide who was doing what.
That's great.
One last question. This is for Dan. Dan, with the power outage that we just had, and you shared with me earlier about that second generator. Obviously, if we were, in the middle, if school had already started, perhaps at the regular board meeting, you can give an update on that, and so we can have a better sense if something like that were to happen again, how that would impact the technology. Okay.
Certainly. Is it okay for me just to give at least a little?
Absolutely. The
Steve,
answer is it would be huge.
yes. The process is,
Of course.
interesting thing is the process was in motion already yesterday. The electricians were in to get that run from the generator to the IDF closet. And it just so happened 10 minutes after they left the building is when the power went out. So that just proves why we wanted electricity to the second main server room. And so the electricians are actually back on site tomorrow. And it sounds like the plugs will be in place at the end of the week. we will have to make some network configuration changes and probably update our uninterrupted power supply unit to handle the voltage and the variable voltage that could come from a generator. So, but that should all be in place before school starts.
Okay, that's great, Dan, thank you.
And teachers are in the building when? Starting what date?
So we have our new teachers starting next week. And certainly we'll have staff also. So part of our staff contract are days that are set in place for them to come in and set up their rooms and things like that. So we'll have staff in next week doing that. New teachers in next week, the following week, all of our staff. I hesitate to say back, and I want to clarify because on one hand, we're doing most of our staff introduction type activities online and virtually. And some people may look at that and say, well, why are you bringing kids in if you're doing your staff all virtually? Our reason for that is we don't want to jeopardize being able to open and have our staff available to working with kids by bringing them all together and the potential risk for there to be some spread from all of those adults in the building going to meetings and things like that. So most of our school opening activities, many of them will be online or with teachers working individually in classrooms, but that'll all start that following week. So we're basically back open, as it is this week, so.
I think, I know we covered this a couple of minutes ago, but the whole having Wednesdays off, I think that's such a huge thing that sets us aside even from a teacher standpoint. Because I have a bunch of teacher friends that are freaking out by the amount of hours that they'll have to work Monday through Friday. So I think having that Wednesday sets us aside from a staff perspective, but I think also from kids, like though it's going to be exhausting in our new environment, right? So giving them that, I don't know, enrichment day, is that what we're calling it? Like, I think that's huge for everybody involved. And it's not, I feel like everyone's going to learn so much more and so much better because they have that break, or because you can get those teams together on those days and really learn from each other. I just think that's the world.
I think one of the reasons for that, and I wanted to, I think sometimes there's a perception that it's just this kind of teacher planning day, or it's time to clean the building. We're asking our teams to do the planning for all of our kids. So it's not like teacher A is doing online instruction, teacher B is doing blended, teacher C is doing the classroom, and they're all kind of in their own separate worlds. We're asking the team to put the best of their experience and collective knowledge together in designing lessons that meet the needs of all of those different types of kids in their kind of setting that they're receiving their instruction in. And that's why it's so important for that Wednesday for our teachers to be able to really get together and plan that instruction that they're going to need to carry out in all three of those environments.
That must take so much stress out, or just have it be just a less lonely time for those people, because I can't even imagine what you guys and staff are going through, and nobody's done this before, right? So to be able to have your people together to figure that out, I'm just really thrilled for everyone for that. So that's great. Any questions? Steve or Jack, do you have any other questions? Anything?
No, just an observation. The last time I saw anybody working this hard, I think it was a guy riding a unicycle and he was juggling knives. I mean, you guys are doing some amazing things. I'm impressed.
A picture of that.
It won't be me on that.
No? Okay. You'll have something other than knives.
Although I was out checking tornado duty last night. That was kind of exciting.
So lucky. Great, then I move to adjourn the meeting at, I can't see, we'll call it 7 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor, Lisa?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
And Dana, aye. We are adjourned.